The first reading is from Lamentations. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for one to bear the yoke in youth, to sit alone in silence when the Lord has imposed it, to put one's mouth to the dust, there may yet be hope, to give one's cheek to the smiter, and be filled with insults. For the Lord will not reject forever. Although he causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. For he does not willingly afflict or grieve anyone. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We read responsively together Psalm 30. I will exalt you, O Lord, because you have lifted me up, and have not let my enemies triumph over me. O Lord my God, I cried out to you, and you restored me to health. You brought me up, O Lord, from the dead. You restored my life as I was going down to the grave. Sing praise to the Lord, all you faithful. Give thanks in holy remembrance. God's wrath is short. God's favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping spends the night, but joy comes in the morning. While I felt secure, I said, I shall never be disturbed. You, Lord, with your favor made me as strong as the mountains. Then you hid your face, and I was filled with fear. I cried to you, O Lord. I pleaded with my Lord, saying, what profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you or declare your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and have mercy upon me. O Lord, be my helper. You have turned my wailing into dancing. You have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy. Therefore my heart sings to you without ceasing. O Lord my God, I will give you thanks forever. The second reading comes from 2 Corinthians. Now as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in utmost eagerness, and in our love for you, so we want you to excel also in this generous undertaking. I do not say this as a command, but I am testing the genuineness of your love against the earnestness of others. For you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. And in this matter I am giving my advice. It is appropriate for you to begin last year not only to do something, but even to desire to do something. Now finish doing it, so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means. For if the eagerness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it is a question of a fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, in order that there may be a fair balance. As it is written, the one who had much did not have too much, and the one who had little did not have too little. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 5th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she might be made well and live. So he went with him. And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had had. And she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, if I but touch his clothes, I will be made well. Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware of the power that had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the little girl was. He took her by the hand and said, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. If you've ever had the opportunity to travel, either pre-9/11 or then post-9/11, you had very different experiences of what that was like. I remember pre-9/11 traveling once to Canada with my family. And as we came to the border, we had to stop the car. We were greeted by a Canadian border agent. He quickly glanced around the car, asked us where we were going, how long we were staying, and then he warmly welcomed us to Canada as he waved us through the border checkpoint. No big deal. Very friendly. Post 9/11, in fact, just 9 months after 9/11, I traveled to Europe with the Singing Statesman from UW-Eau Claire. This time, the border was much different. There wasn't a lot of friendliness. You stood in a line with your passport in your hand. I had to wait there about 20 minutes while people ahead of me were slowly processed through. When you got to the counter, you were curtly greeted by a straight-faced agent. But looking around, you could see many armed guards slowly watching the crowd. Some people were randomly pulled aside and had all of their things rifled through. When it was my turn at the counter, the border agent asked about 10 or 15 different questions about who I was, where I had been, who I had met with, before finally stamping my passport and waving me through. Borders are odd places, especially national boundaries. I mean, if we think about it, we've created imaginary lines on the ground where if you stand on one side, you're in one place, and if you stand on the other side, you're in a completely different place. And not only does your location change, but the laws and the rules and the government and the culture and the practices and the language all change just by crossing an imaginary line. And we've set up rules and laws about how you can cross that imaginary line and what it means once you do. Boundaries are meant to keep people separate. They're meant to draw lines where some stay on one side and some stay on the other. These past several years, we've heard much about borders and boundaries. We've talked about, we've all heard about a border crisis at the southern border with Mexico. People drove political conversations around fear of a huge migrant crowd moving from Central America towards our southern border. We heard stories of danger and fear about what happens when people attempt to cross the border. We've heard how some use the desperation of others and force them into what basically amounts to slavery, just to help them cross that border. We've heard of the separation of families, of people held in deplorable conditions, of children lost in the system, all because of a national border and what it means to stand on one side or the other. And it wasn't too long ago that we had travel bans of people from certain regions and countries because of the color of their skin, their language, their religion. So too COVID has changed how we think about borders. Because of the spread of the virus, travel became nearly impossible across some borders. New Zealand was particularly restrictive in how people were allowed to travel. So too, U.S. citizens, right? We were barred from traveling throughout much of the world to help slow the spread of the contagion. Borders, these imaginary lines on the ground, settled through diplomacy and settled through bloodshed, shape so much of how we see ourselves and our identity and the identity of others around the world. Now, inasmuch as national boundaries are indeed a necessity in our world, we've created other boundaries as well, right? We create boundaries all across our lives. We create boundaries in our families, keeping some close and others further away. We create boundaries in our workplaces, choosing to interact with some and not others. We create boundaries in our schools, often leading to bullying. We create boundaries in our town, right? The good parts of town, the bad parts of town. We create boundaries with strangers, avoiding certain types of people because they're different or we're afraid. And no matter where these boundaries exist in our lives, we have a set of rules and guidelines for how we negotiate those boundaries. For most of us, we avoid crossing them, preferring what we call our comfort zone. The boundaries keep us feeling safe and secure and comfortable in our lives. But we too often forget about what that boundary does to people on the other side, those we're keeping out, those we're keeping at a distance. We want ourselves and our family and our friends to feel safe and comfortable and secure in our world. And too many things that are different or challenging or difficult are experienced as uncomfortable or unsafe. So we use boundaries and borders to keep those things and those people out. Too often, those boundaries keep people out who most desperately need to be in. Now, in Jesus' time, there were a lot of rules about who could talk to who and who you could touch. Now, if you've ever tried to read the whole Bible cover to cover, you've probably gotten bogged down in Leviticus and Deuteronomy with all these different rules about when you can worship and what you can touch and what you can eat. But generally speaking, in terms of touching, if a body is oozing or flaking or bleeding or dead, don't touch it. Touching someone who is bleeding or sick or dead makes you ritually unclean. So when that happens, the only way that you can rejoin the people in the temple or in the synagogue in worship of God is you have to go outside the boundary of town. You have to completely wash ritually from head to toe. You have to wait a full day. And then you have to come back and offer sacrifice to God. And then, and only then, can you come back into the assembly and fully participate in the life of your community. But what if it's you who are sick? What if it's you who, for no fault of your own, has become ill? You get pushed out, you get ignored, you have people avoid you. You can't shake hands, you can't hug. You lose human contact. You lose all ability to be someone in society. You become an outcast. Think about that for a moment. To be sick, to be ill, to be in desperate need of healing makes you untouchable. An outcast from the very life you thought you knew. A 12-year-old girl is sick. She's dying and her father is desperate. As a leader of the synagogue, he comes and he falls down at Jesus' feet. Come and touch her, he pleads over and over again, so that she might be made well and live. And without question, without hesitation, Jesus goes. A woman has been bleeding for 12 years. For 12 years, she's seen doctors and she's seen healers. She's been through procedures and taken medications and different mixtures, all in the hopes of stopping this bleeding. For 12 years, she's been an outcast, considered unclean. For 12 years, her life has essentially been on hold, unable to move forward because of her illness. She moves quickly through that crowd. It's taboo. She's not even supposed to be there. She's not supposed to be this close to other people. She's definitely not supposed to touch anyone. But that's exactly what she does. She reaches out a hand and she touches Jesus' cloak. She reaches across the boundaries that the world around her have created. Boundaries she was raised to know and respect. And in that moment, she's healed. Who touched me? Jesus asks. And she's afraid. She's afraid because of all the boundaries she's broken. She's a woman who's interacted with a man who's not her husband or her father. She came seeking healing for herself instead of sending a man on her behalf. She touched a man without permission. She violated laws of cleanliness. But Jesus sees what she has done, and instead of condemning her for crossing boundaries, he calls that crossing faith and declares that that's what has made her well. By the time Jesus arrives at the child, she's already dead. Family and friends are weeping and wailing outside the house. There's nothing more that can be done. But Jesus crosses over. He enters the house. He crosses the threshold of her room. He takes the child by the hand. He touches her corpse, and he raises her to life. In the crossing of boundaries, we're healed. In the crossing of boundaries, we find fullness of life. Now, there are most certainly times when we need boundaries. We need rules. We need laws. We need organization, and we need order. Because these things do protect us. They do help keep us safe. They help control the fear and the danger of our world, and they provide a means for punishing those who violate them, who risk the safety and the well-being of others for their own selfishness. Boundaries can be good and can be life-giving. But far too often we use these boundaries simply as a means of keeping others away because we don't like them, or they're different, or they're sick, or we're afraid. We use boundaries to exclude people, to ignore people, to close our eyes to the hurt and the pain of the world. We like our comfort, we like our safety, we like the boundaries that keep us there, but fail to think about those kept on the other side. In these times and in these places where the most vulnerable among us are cut off because boundaries are used to make us feel comfortable, in those times Jesus crosses over. Jesus crosses boundaries that divide us so that the healing presence of God might be found wherever it is needed. Jesus knows no boundaries, no limitations, no human divisions. Where there is illness, where there is hurting, where there is pain and violence, where there is anger and hate, where there is death, Jesus crosses over. Jesus crosses over so that you and I and this whole creation might know the grace-filled, loving presence of God. In our world, in our community, in your and my lives, Jesus is continually crossing boundaries of division so that all of us might have life. In the same way that Jesus boldly crosses over, he invites his disciples to do the same. As recipients of God's love and grace in Jesus, you and I are invited to cross over with Jesus. You and I are invited to become agents of healing, agents of hope, agents of life in Christ to this broken and hurting world. This is the life to which we will welcome Ellery this morning. It's why those promises we make as parents, as sponsors, as a congregation are so important. She'll be baptized into Jesus' death and resurrection. Most certainly, Ellery is this morning a recipient of God's promise of life beyond the grave, but so too, like all of us, she is baptized into Jesus' life. We're baptized into a life of caring for this world. We're baptized into a life of caring for other people. We're baptized into a life of caring for creation and all God's creatures. We're baptized into a life of welcoming the stranger. We're baptized into a life of tending to those who've been cast out. We're baptized into a life of sharing the good news of Jesus. We're baptized into a life of helping end division and promoting healing in this world. We're baptized into a life of boundary crossing. You and I and Ellery this morning are called to cross over those boundaries that keep others out so that all of God's people are welcomed into the life-giving presence of Jesus. Jesus crosses over so that all the brokenness of this world, all the brokenness in our communities, and the brokenness of your and my life might be healed. Jesus leads us in a life of boundary crossing so that we and this whole world might have abundant life. Thanks be to God. Amen.